Hello, today we're going to be looking at the upcoming local weather, the national weather pattern, and the tropics. To start off, for the United States, we have a lot of heat advisories for the Great Plains and going into the Ohio Valley. Um, that's with the heat waves to come. There's heat continuing for parts of Texas and the Southwest. We have excessive heat warnings for Southern California, Nevada, and Arizona. In the Northeast, we're going to be having an upcoming heat wave with the heat advisories and a couple excessive heat watches. That is up for mostly New Jersey. I believe that is the only state that has those up. We might see more soon. We have some, I believe, flood advisories, flood watches for Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And then we have some other alerts, including red flag warnings for parts of the West and air quality alerts scattered across the nation. We also have severe weather today. We'll be getting more into that. But for parts of the Great Lakes, including Ohio and Michigan and surrounding states. Looking at the Storm Prediction Center, we have two severe thunderstorm watches up for Michigan and Ohio, and parts of northern Indiana with the enhanced risk, and the slight risk. We also we could be seeing some more severe thunderstorms as the day goes on. The mesoscale discussion for Michigan and Ohio concerns the increasing threat for damaging winds and possibly brief tornado. So it highlights the main threat for today. We have some isolated tornadoes possible, along with some a large area of possible severe thunderstorms with stronger winds and some small hail, maybe medium hail in Michigan and Ohio as we get further on into the day. And you also see that secondary area in Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas mainly. And we need to be watching for some isolated or scattered severe thunderstorms today. There's a slight risk there and a larger marginal risk. There are also general thunderstorms possible for much of the Great Plains and parts of the southeast, especially along the coast. Um, we also have, we can look at the thunderstorm possibility. Thunderstorms likely in Michigan before they really die off by the time we get to this evening. And then storm reports for today. We have some wind, but that's it for now. And then looking at the fire risk, we just have, along with those red flag warnings, we have elevated and critical risk for fire. Tomorrow we have an elevated risk for similar area in Nevada and Idaho, which is the exact same area as today. Alright, now looking at severe weather for the next few days, we have a slight risk for the Northeast, along with a marginal risk in surrounding areas, and a marginal risk as well for the Great Plains and parts of the Midwest. Wind and hail in isolated spots is possible for the Great Plains, and for the Northeast, we could see some isolated tornadoes, mostly weak, um, and wind threat will be possible in scattered severe thunderstorms. Isolated small hail possible as well. Looking at Friday, and on Thursday we could see an upgrade to an enhanced risk, so we'll be having to watch for that. Friday, I'm curious to see if we have this slight risk increased. This is it's a very large marginal risk area like the past few days, so we'll have to see what will happen with that. There's the large general thunderstorm risk for a lot of the northern tier, and another slight risk, as I mentioned, for Iowa and Illinois, as well as Wisconsin. Now looking at the current severe weather warnings, we have one severe thunderstorm warning just south of Denver, so that there might be some more warnings coming out with that. We have one special marine warning for southern Louisiana, but that shouldn't be that shouldn't be repeated too much today because there's no severe weather expected today in the southeast. And then we have many severe thunderstorm warnings with this line, and those warnings could continue for a little bit but should die off. The severe thunderstorm should weaken and go below the threshold for warnings as we get into other parts of eastern Ohio. You could see some thunderstorms as well in southern Ontario. But we see a large area of thunderstorms in Michigan right now. Now, looking at the tropics, we have one disturbance. The other two were dropped. The one that was going towards the southeast coast is not expected to form. It is very disorganized. Same with the system in the southern Caribbean. Conditions were not favorable and it never formed. But its energy may be moving on to the eastern Pacific. We'll have to see what will happen with that. We can look at that right now. So in the eastern Pacific, we see this area of rain moving into the eastern part of the basin, and then you could see that low pressure system trying to form with some heavier rain that indicates the possible tropical development. And then there's another wave behind it. I wouldn't put too much stock into that. But this first wave that comes through could be the remnants of the invest in the MDR that we've been watching. So we have to watch for that. Looking at the Eastern Pacific, that system has a 20% chance, which will probably go higher. This disturbance has a 30% chance of forming. I believe it is low as of now in the next 7 days, but as we move beyond, like around the 5 to 7 days, we'll likely see a slightly increased chance for forming. And then the system hopefully will move out to sea, but we cannot rule out slight impacts to the Caribbean. It is a little too far out to see if it will go closer to the coast or out to sea, but I'm leaning towards an out to sea track as of now. So Bermuda may have to be watching for some impacts with that. Looking at the North Atlantic, we see the GFS spins up this system into a hurricane and tries to gun it for major hurricane status, and then it moves out to sea without impacting too many areas. The European has not been forming the system, but it looks like it's trying to form it actually on this model run, but only into a tropical storm before quickly moving into areas with more unfavorable conditions. The changes in the track really have to do with the high pressure system in the middle of the Atlantic. That is the Bermuda High, and it's really starting to move, moving east on both model runs. So if it does move farther east, the system will move out to sea, and that looks more and more likely as we go on. Looking at the Western Pacific, we have a typhoon, which became a Category 4 in the last few days. It was impacting the northern Philippines and will move on to impact Taiwan and China as a hurricane and eventually tropical storm. 91W is expected to become a tropical storm or tropical depression soon, within the next day. Alright, now that was a lot of information to cover. We'll be going over more of that soon in the coming days. But now let's look at the local weather. We're looking at the Farmingdale Airport, the current conditions. We see very low humidity, but not dangerously low. Just a nicer day aside from the heat. If the heat was not present, it would be a nicer day, but it is very warm, almost 90 in some areas. We have some winds, and that'll be bringing possibly some warmer air to come in the coming days. We'll go into that. So that is the upcoming heat wave. For Thursday and Friday, we'll likely be seeing mid-90s, possibly closer to 100 in parts of Nassau County. but likely in the mid-90s in a lot of areas of western Suffolk and Nassau counties. Thursday night, severe thunderstorms are possible, and that could be bringing some damaging winds and some lightning associated with the storms, possibly heavy rain, and of course the severe threats we mentioned earlier, so the isolated tornadoes and scattered wind threat, as well as small hail. On Friday, there's a chance of thunderstorms as well, but that is not severe, expected as of now. And on Saturday, thunderstorms possible as well. We'll have to see beyond Saturday whether there's a severe threat. On Saturday, we could be seeing a 90-degree another 90-degree day. And on Sunday, it should be cooling off a little bit. Next week actually is supposed to be cooler, so some heat relief expected. Looking on Tuesday and Wednesday, the weather service is expecting mid-80s to low 80s. Now, looking at the excessive rainfall, we are seeing, I believe, a slight risk today for a lot of Michigan, for a lot of the Midwest, including Michigan and Wisconsin, and then the marginal risk for parts of the Southwest and the surrounding areas in the Midwest. In day 2, we have the marginal risk for excessive rainfall in the Northeast, so we should be watching for flash flooding as well tomorrow, and then the slight risk for Vermont and western Massachusetts. Now looking at the Climate Prediction Center to end off the video, we actually saw, as I mentioned, we saw expected to see lower temperatures next week, and that is shown in the 6 to 10 day forecast, much above average for the southeast, and we could be seeing some hundreds there coming up, and then still above average for parts of the southwest, but still quite warm for parts of the southwest, such as Arizona and New Mexico. But the most above average will be in areas such as Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas. That's expected. And then above average for the Northwest as well. Below average for most of the Northeast, not all of it, and is expected to be most below in the interior New England and maybe even coastal Maine and Massachusetts. Now looking at the 8 to 14 day temperature, very similar, just slightly less confident with the above average and below average temperature areas, but that should be increasing in confidence as we get much closer. The precipitation outlook, we're seeing some above average precipitation for parts of the west going into this larger above average area into the northeast and the Ohio Valley. And then slightly different areas as we get into 8 to 14 days. Finally, we'll end off with the monitor, for the drought monitor. We have a lot of abnormally dry areas, but this has been a very quick decrease in drought areas. For Long Island and New York City, we still have some moderate drought, but it looks like that has been decreasing in area. The main area of drought is now in the Great Plains and parts of Texas. And also, I'd like to mention that there have been some thunderstorms in Alaska, and there's been the severe threat. So this warmer pattern is also impacting Alaska. Alright, I think this is going to do it for the video. Thank you for watching.